Hey, I'm Osman Faruqi, and this is The Drop, a culture show from the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, where we dive into the latest in the world of pop culture and entertainment. I'm here with Thomas Mitchell and Mel Cambry. We did it, guys. We survived another Oscars and awards season. We're pretty intact, though I have to say I'm quite angry right now because I just found out before we started turning these mics on that Thomas has never seen Casablanca, one of the greatest films of all time, and now I'm doubting your ability to comment on these awards in cinema in general.
Yes, that and Anyone But You. I still haven't seen those two films.
The two masterpieces.
There are so many references that must be going above your head just in daily existence.
No, like when people say, "Play it again, Sam," I'm like, that's from Casablanca.
Famously, that line is never uttered in the film.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
There we go.
Look, okay, we're recording this just as the ceremony has finished. We all watched it, we blogged it, we've talked about it a bit, but we thought we'd get in front of the mics as soon as possible, coming live and direct with our thoughts and takes. Let's start with maybe the very big, obvious question. How did we feel? How did we feel overall after this 3.5-hour ceremony, the 96th Academy Awards? What's racing through your minds?
I thought it was a very boring Oscars. I know that you both know that because I said it several times and we were all sitting back to back.
But you didn't just say it was boring, did you?
Don't walk
you
back your actual thoughts on this.
I said it was the most boring Oscars in history.
And then we said, have you seen all of them?
No, but I have seen Casablanca. No, okay, fine. It was the most boring Oscars I can remember in recent times. And I really, really stand by that. I thought it was just like lacked any surprise, all the elements that often make Oscars fun or like memorable or even like have a second life on the internet were missing. I know it's been like probably a long award season and we've done like a lot of blogging for the Globes and, you know, and the Grammys and stuff. But this felt like a very limp end to a long award season.
How about you, Ma? How do you feel?
Firstly, I'm surprised. There were two Yorgosses in the audience.
Yeah,
and
they got made fun of. So it was also a racist ceremony for the first time ever.
I think I agree with you in that I think it was a kind of bland ceremony, particularly compared to some of the other ceremonies. But I will say I kind of expected that from the Academy Awards. That is what they are. The Oscars is very civilized affair. And in terms of, there were no sensational moments that we maybe wanted, like the slap but I still thought it went at quite a good pace. It was very, easy to watch. There were musical performances. Was it the most amazing Oscars of all time? No, I don't think so. But yeah, I probably wouldn't go as far to hate it as much as you do.
I am interested in this idea that memorable moments like the slap or upsets or whatever are what make for a good Academy Award. I understand that that's what makes for good and compelling television. And when we talked last week about our favourite moments, obviously it's those bits that stand out. And I kind of think you're right, Thomas, that probably in 5 years we won't look back and be like, man, those 2024 Oscars, remember when these three big things happened? Messi the dog being there at the start was probably the best, and it's really not that dramatic. We've seen that dog a fair bit in award season.
Glad to see he's doing well.
Yeah.
It's if it's the same dog. Because
I guess what I'm saying is I understand that there wasn't anything super dramatic, but the more distance I've got from the ceremony, the more I look at who won and what people said, the more I'm like, it was 3.5 hours. It was a celebration of some of the best films, of the decade. Everyone who I think, not everyone, but largely the people who I thought deserved to win, won. A lot of great art was recognized. There were some tight competitions and races. There were a couple of surprise victories. There were some nice speeches given. There were some political issues, burnished and discussed, and some really powerful statements made, which we'll talk about a bit later. So as a acknowledgement of good film of the past 12 months, I thought it was a pretty good Oscars. But I can also see why no normal person would want to spend 3.5 hours watching this.
Yeah, I think for me, and I'm sure we'll get onto it, but it was all so, framed by the Oppenheimer effect. So Oppenheimer was always going to win a lot of awards, and it basically won everyone that it was slated to win. So that, took away the surprise element from the Oscars in terms of, do we care much about the awards? So in that situation, you then almost need the other parts of the Oscars framework to do heavy lifting. You need a really funny host, or you do need outside of I'm Just Ken, which for me was the only saving grace about the entire ceremony, the performances were super boring and just dull. There was no other things in which the Oscars could hang its hat on because Oppenheimer had kind of removed any element of surprise.
Let's talk about those different elements, but I think you're right. Going into this, Oppenheimer was nominated for 13. We knew that was going to win a lot. It ended up winning 7. That's was always likely to be the case, somewhere between 6 to 8 or whatever, and that's what it got. It seems like it was always going to be tricky to make this a enthralling sort of like hanging on to your seat, who's going to win this one kind of a thing. And I guess, yeah, like what could producers have done to make this more like surprising, knowing that it was likely going to be a sweep for Oppenheimer?
I think that if, there are a few things they could have done if the awards themselves weren't going to be interesting enough to kind of maintain attention. And it was clear that they weren't, because the one award that we all kind of perked up in the office to discuss was the Best Actress award, where it was kind of a little less clear whether it would go to Emma Stone or Lily Gladstone. We all were suddenly interested. I guess what they could do is take a note out of, if they wanted to really kind of lose a bit of class, take a note out of the Golden Globes, the Grammys, some of the other awards ceremonies, and do heaps more of those cuts where they cut back to the audience interacting with each other, more of those kind of fly-on-the-wall moments that really were what we were talking about from some of those other ceremonies. It's the people leaning over and discussing. It's the look of shock on people's faces. I think it's so carefully choreographed, and I do feel like when they cut to people they know they're being cut to, that you kind of did miss the drama of what was going on off stage, which you need if you don't have it going on stage. So I reckon if I was a producer, maybe you'd look into that. Maybe more cameos would have been good, a few more surprising people on stages, and more interesting music.
John Cena totally nude wasn't enough for you?
That was a lot, but I don't know if it was a good surprise for me.
Let's talk about the host. So, a big part of what makes a show work or not work is the host. Jimmy Kimmel has done this 1,000 times. He was back again. How did you guys find his hosting?
Yeah, again, not great. I like Kimmel. He's funny, but I just thought, it is a producer's job to probably look at the Oscars and be like, okay, well, Oppenheimer's going to win everything, so we have to make, especially the host, he's going to have to work overtime tonight. And I just thought Kimmel, even last year, I thought he played it pretty safe. And again, that opening monologue, you and I both are big fans of opening monologues, Osman, and I just thought I did laugh maybe once. I thought the jokes were lazy, the weird, he made a gag about Christopher Nolan kind of being a, not using tech and being off the internet, and because he has a porn addiction, that was just almost head scratching. I don't know. I just thought, I read on the weekend, Kimmel has a team of 24 writers that do that opening monologue. What the fuck?
Where were they? Yeah,
Is that just writing by committee and everything is bad, or are they just too afraid to take risks?
Because of the writer's strike, took them all out of work, and he's like, I'll put you all on the bill
everyone.
for this gig.
But that's another thing. I actually thought that Hollywood is so famously introspective and self-obsessed, and he probably the one most interesting bit of his opening monologue was when he talked about the writers and actors strike, and he was kind of earnest and sincere. But I thought they probably should have done some more gear around the writers and actors strike. It's It was the biggest issue in entertainment this year, and I feel like it didn't get that much love or attention.
Yeah, I think he has a very tough job, because I think, this is the 4th time he's done it, 2nd in a row. I think they obviously don't want someone who's going to push the comedic boundaries or be edgy or kind of be innovative in their jokes, because they've done that before and it's not worked out well for them. So I think it's a hard mandate for him. But yeah, it was very daggy dad lame jokes. I did laugh out loud at one where he was he's Killian when he's playing a serious role, and then he's Silly Ann when he's playing comedy. It's just such a dad joke to make. And then it was those kind of jokes mixed with some kind of obscure ones, or ones I didn't understand. I think there was at one point he was talking to Robert Downey Jr. and he was is that an acceptance speech in your pocket, or is your penis rectangular? And it's they're not a funny joke, but also not the kind of punny, lame joke that he was also doing. So it was this weird mishmash.
Yeah.
It is always funny with the Oscars because they are straddling very different audiences, right? They're straddling older people who've grown up watching this thing for a long time and will keep tuning in to see this old-timey dad humor about stuff. But they're also, by putting movies like Barbie in the Best Picture race and having Ken be, having I'm Just Ken be performed by Ryan Gosling, trying to attract younger people. But it leads to these weird moments where John Mulaney, who's a very funny comedian, he comes on and does a funny bit, which is just reading out the plot of Field of Dreams, the baseball movie. And I thought that was hilarious because it's so bizarre and obscure. Our younger colleague Nell is I don't know what is happening right now. This is so strange. And it's so hard to meld those two things. It's there's a bit of the Oscars for you and there's a bit of the Oscars for these other people, and you're probably not going to overlap. And that does lead to a chaotic and hard to watch and disjointed ceremony over a long period of time.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, I thought actually Mulaney, he also made a Madam Web joke, probably the best Madam Web joke of the night. I actually was like, oh God, it's embarrassing when another comedian comes on for a 2-minute bit and then is like, probably should be the host next year. Like if I was walking away, I'd be like, let's get John Mulaney for next year. He is a bit more edgy. He's a bit more like unpredictable. But yeah, I just feel like, we've had a funny awards season where, Joe Coy, the comic, crashed and burned at the Golden Globes, and there was so much like discussion around his performance and his writing, and he kind of threw his writers under the bus in the aftermath of that. But it's like, who would have thought that at the end of the day, I almost prefer something like that rather than like something bland and safe than what Kimmel gave us.
Yeah. So other than the actual handing out of the awards, there's the host and then there's the musical numbers. So basically all the nominees for Best Original Song traditionally do a live performance at the Oscars. This year I was like not really that excited about it because there were so many slow emotional ballads that really just like changed the energy at the ceremony. And it opened with a song that none of us really loved, the Billie Eilish track from Barbie. And like, Billie can sing. I'm not like saying that she's a bad artist, but that didn't really work for me. It just felt like it flattened the mood at the very start of things.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Dua Lipa, as we've said before, definitely should have
Imagine if
won
Dua
an
Lipa
award.
came out roller skating at the start of that ceremony. Would have been amazing.
That's what you want. There were no like upper songs. Like a lot of them were kind of slow ballads. John Batiste, Becky G on the Fire Inside. I mean, that was kind of powerful, but again, it wasn't really a song that had everyone kind of up about dancing. And then Billie with her ballad, it was all, I don't think there was nothing that brought the energy up, and I do think some of those songs would have been an opportunity to bring something really spectacular and fun to the stage.
Well, there was one of these.
There was one of
which
these.
did sort of save the ceremony, didn't it, Thomas?
A song for my people. Yes, Ryan Gosling, as we all kind of predicted, I'm Just Ken was probably the best moment of the, I mean, not even probably, it was the best moment of the Oscars. And you could feel, even watching in the office, and I've already seen on the internet, you could feel like a very obvious lift in people's excitement and enthusiasm as soon as that number started. And, he was great. He's like the original Disney kid, or was he, Mickey Mouse?
Mouse
he can sing and dance and act and stuff. So he was very much in that Gosling zone.
Shoving the mic in front of, Greta and Margot is pretty fun.
Yeah, that was like the fun part of it, like going past Emma Stone and making her dance to it. Like it was the kind of them getting involved made that even better because it just felt like everyone was up and into it.
Yeah, and like Slash was obviously busking out the front of the studio, so they got him involved. But yeah, like that was just a really fun, it honestly felt like the one high moment in a night full of like a very low energy.
Do you think part of that is because when you think, and I promise you're about to talk about the films and that element of it as well, but when you think about the films that are nominated and the songs that are part of them, or just like the general vibe, very heavy stuff. Oppenheimer is a heavy, brooding movie. Anatomy of a Fall, a dark, grim movie. Zone of Interest, a very grim movie. Like, there is a somberness, I think, to the Academy this year, and Barbie was, I guess, this sort of like ray of sunshine, and even Poor Things, which has color and vibrancy to it, is also pretty dark at times. So I just wonder whether when we look back on this, we'll be like a lot of big and important and very good films, but ones that you don't necessarily associate with like a great fun time at the theatres.
Yeah, I wonder if that is unique to this year in particular, Thomas. I mean, I guess you've seen every Oscars since 1929.
Well, see, in the 30s, the way...
like I do wonder, it's not like a comedy wins the Oscar often, right?
No, very, very rarely. Yeah.
But yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I think it does kind of, because they are dealing with topics where they're telling stories of great tragedies in some of these cases, it is hard to
Well, yeah, like Killers of the Flower Moon, that had Best Original Song as well, and that's a mournful, sort of native song that, it's a song for my people, it's inspiring as well, but the story of that movie is a really dark one, and it's hard to jump out of your chair and be like, yeah, let's go, take that, William Hale. That's not really the vibe of that movie.
Yeah, and I think, and I guess this kind of goes to the speeches as well. Like, I think people are so cautious about what they say, and often they just are a recall of thank yous to people. Sometimes they're not, but a lot of the speeches really were just people thanking a whole lot of people and those whose stories they were allowed to tell. So I don't think you even got much colour or excitement on the speech front, which can save a show like this when you have interesting people saying interesting things. And obviously there were a few comments that were made that were like kind of noteworthy, but generally I think they were all pretty unexceptional, really. And maybe that is the fatigue at being at the end rather than at the start. Like maybe everyone they've done the speech already, like
Yeah,
for
they've
some
gone
of
viral
these.
5 times.
Yeah,
It
like
does-
what is left to say? Who is left to thank?
It does feel like that this year in particular. I don't know why, but it does feel like everyone has been maybe engaged for longer in awards season. So at the very end, like at the here we are at the grand finale of Hollywood, and interest has dipped a little bit. I especially think in the big acting categories and with Christopher Nolan, like those speeches, maybe like Emma Stone because she was a bit shocked and everyone was a bit shocked. Hers was kind of interesting, but otherwise. Like it was none of them. I can't recall comments from any of them.
One of the changes that was made this year was around the acting awards, where they got previous recipients of the acting categories one by one to announce the nominees for this year. And I can sort of see the logic behind that here. It's like, let's get some big name stars, Forrest Whitaker and whoever else to come out and talk. Fell flat for me. It didn't work. It just felt like, again, it slowed things down, and it felt, it's like, oh, Cillian Murphy, like you do such great work and I love your acting. It's like, yeah, man, we all like him. Like, what's the point of this?
Yeah, I thought like it felt like they'd got them down from Oscar heaven and then wheeled them out. Like the way they all kind of stepped forward, it was like, are these people dead? It felt like they were a hologram
Well, Forrest
or
Whitaker
something.
popped up. I was like, yeah, where have you been, man? This is cool.
I just kept thinking of like in Anchorman when the news teams come out and they have like this, the Channel 4 news team. That's what it felt like all these like weird Oscar winners like having a face off or something. And I just, again, it was very self-indulgent. And I think someone said it before, but it's one of those ideas that sounds really good on paper. And then you do it on the night and you're like, oh, this hasn't quite worked. Because it's weird, like having these people speak, because they'll kind of speak, addressing their comments directly to the nominees. You had Matthew McConaughey speaking to Bradley Cooper, and that's like kind of a wet dream for me. But it was so like cringeworthy, just like, it was like listening in on a private phone call and so like over the top and almost insincere. I can see how they're like, this would be great. It'll be such great TV. And in fact, it was the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of feel like if you're going to get that talent, like Jennifer Lawrence, put them to better use in the ceremony.
Totally. Put them together. Have them interact.
Yeah.
Like having McConaughey and Forrest Whitaker, whatever, like, I don't know, interact about something would have been more interesting than just on their own
Your
with like the
wet dream.
light shining on them. That's my wet dream. Yeah.
What's yours?
All right, let's talk about who won. And Oppenheimer won. Like, that's it. Christopher Nolan was the big daddy out of these awards. They ended up winning 7 awards from 13 nominations, which sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but it's like, I don't even think it puts them in the top 15 or 16 historically in terms of movies that have won Oscars. There's quite a few that have won 8, and then there's the big 3 that have won 11. But everything, below the line stuff, Hoyte van Hoytema won for Best Cinematography, and you said, Thomas, I don't remember anyone's speeches. I remember a bit of his, clearly, just because he said, thank God for Christopher Nolan, like, he loves filming on celluloid, like, we love celluloid. Like, we should be talking about celluloid way more. It's such a specific thing. But of course, that's why these awards are great, because these guys are just nerds. This guy just loves filming stuff on film, and he's got 20 million people in America, God knows how many other people around the world having to watch him, and they're like, who is this weird guy? And
Talking
he's
about
just
celluloid.
talking about celluloid. Like, that's pretty
And
fun.
then in the office, one other weird guy, Osman clapping slowly.
Other than that, obviously, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Cillian Murphy, Best Supporting Actor for Robert Downey Jr. Nothing surprising here, really. Any categories you guys thought it should have won in that it didn't?
No, I mean, I think, no one's going to feel bad for Oppenheimer. It did really well. I still feel like, and again, this is not that it was a surprise, but I still feel like Robert Downey Jr. fucking got away with one tonight. Like, and there was so much chat. Again, I also thought that was not very funny from Kimmel, like the Robert Downey Jr. drug gags. Like, not that because, you shouldn't go there, but it just wasn't funny. But yeah, I just think Robert Downey Jr., that was a kind of like career retrospective nod for him.
It felt like it. It felt like sort of you've been on this big comeback mission and you've done it now. But I'm like,
and here's your literal award for like,
yeah. The other big winner of the night, I think it's fair to say, is Poor Things. I think people knew that Poor Things would probably do well, but it ended up just like flipping basically every tight race that it was in. And the first 3 were these really interesting, I guess, like Poor Things Barbie showdowns of makeup, production design, and costuming, which I think everyone thought if Barbie was going to get something, it might be one of those. And just literally 3 times in a row, it was Poor Things. Fair? Did Barbie deserve a bit of a look in those categories?
I mean, I think we all have agreed previously that Barbie has like a great look to it, but so does Poor Things. And I think in some ways, Poor Things is so unique and original in terms of the world that has been created for it, that maybe it gets kudos for that, because in some ways Barbie was already laid out for them. Barbie has all her aesthetic, the pink, the kind of plastic, the kind of shades, and, she's got her props that are associated with all the dolls. So I think maybe Poor Things, I mean, I kind of agree with the choice. Poor Things, I think, was more original and interesting. At the same time as I obviously loved the whole world of Barbie Land. What did you think, Thomas?
Yeah, it was funny because it is interesting on Oscars night how quickly a narrative forms. Like those 3 awards were in a row, and so it was like within a 5-minute window, Poor Things was suddenly like on one, and Barbie was like totally shut out of the Oscars, and then you knew it wasn't going to win Best Picture, so it was like Barbie's over, and it is crazy. But then I agree, like, and especially like with the makeup award, like what Margot Robbie being Margot Robbie, and, yeah. I think it's a fair win, and it kind of rounds out what we've all known basically through this very long awards season, in that Hollywood cooled on Barbie. It was part of the biggest narrative of the year, but by the time we got into this, I think everyone knew like where it sat in the hierarchy of all these films.
Yeah, I'm not unhappy at all either. Like, I get why the Oscars include a film like Barbie in Best Picture. They're trying to say we're not just for art snobs, like we get big movies too. But that said, Barbie's award was making like $1 trillion, and everyone getting like Poor Things made $13 million US at the box office. Yorgos is a lunatic. The people who worked on it like backed his vision and brought it to life so splendidly. And if the Oscars aren't for weirdos creating this idea in their head and making it feel real and putting together a really great film, and if they're not going to get rewarded at the box office, then they should get rewarded critically and by their peers like this. So I think it makes sense that Poor Things edged out Barbie in these categories. I think the one Poor Things win that I think is a little bit controversial is Emma Stone for Best Actress. And we did foreshadow this. We said this is likely to come down to her and Lily Gladstone, and it certainly seemed like Emma Stone was genuinely like a bit surprised and felt a bit awkward. I think like we knew that the Poor Things narrative was growing, and you thought, well, maybe everyone's just voted for Poor Things in the ballot, but if Killers of the Flower Moon was going to get a look in anywhere, it would be for Lily Gladstone. She would have been the first Native American to win an Oscar. Didn't happen. How did you guys feel about that one?
Yeah, I'm quite shocked by that, because I just can't see how you can equate their two performances. Like, Emma Stone is fantastic in Poor Things, but it is this kind of realer, bigger than life character that she's putting on. All the emotions are hyperbolic and exaggerated. The movements are kind of deliberately kind of over the top, which I'm not saying doesn't take skill, it does. But I do think that Lily Gladstone's stole Killers of the Flower Moon and was really the heart and soul of that film, whereas Emma has quite an amazing cast around her for all of Poor Things. You know, Mark Ruffalo being one of the main ones, but all of she's got great supporting cast, and not that Lily Gladstone didn't enjoy.
Lily Gladstone working with these two up and comers in
these two young sprouts.
Robert De Niro.
That's true. I just feel like she carried more of the weight of that film on her own, and she had a harder role to play because it wasn't so larger than life. And I think the restraint that she had to, like, you know, to be able to convey her emotions without the kind of the topness of something like happens in Poor Things was like pretty powerful. So yeah, I can't really understand the thinking behind that, like why people thought Emma Stone was so good and Lily Gladstone not as good. What do you think?
People like the white lady?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe like a little bit of that, but also like, I mean, Emma Stone, she's won an Oscar before.
Yeah.
She's obviously very like connected to lots of people, and I think like this is so interesting. Like we talk about The Curse a bit on this show, the show that she was on with Nathan Fielder. I don't think that was necessarily a deliberate like Oscars play, but I think it helped her. I think it helped that people were talking about her this year for her good performance in Poor Things, but also her very interesting and totally out there performance in this cerebral, wacky TV show as well. And I think that just made her front of mind in every Academy voter's head, I think, leading into voting season or for most of 2023 in a way that Lily Gladstone, like, no one really knew her before this movie, and Leo did a great job getting her in front of people. But other than that, it's not like people were talking about Lily Gladstone day in, day out.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The Curse probably did really help her, because I feel like that was one of the most original TV shows of the year, and it almost got a lot more hype than I think people were expecting. I was like sad about this one, you know, but perhaps it makes sense in what was the world's most boring Oscars. The one chance they had to do something interesting and exciting, instead they went the predictable way and gave it to Emma Stone, who, as you said, has already won one. Not that she shouldn't be able to have another one, but like I think Jennifer Lawrence actually said it in the weird, like, here's everyone to introduce the Oscars. She said, you know, Lily Gladstone, you were the heart and soul of Killers of the Flower Moon, and she really was. Like, that was such an incredible performance. And it's it is one of those weird things where in the category, like, it's almost strange that they have to sit together these types of performances. But yeah, it was sad, I think. And also, perhaps Lily Gladstone would have given us quite a nice moment had she had the opportunity to speak. But instead it was like Emma Stone being like, oh my God, this is so crazy.
Yeah, can we talk about that for a second? Speeches. There's something, I know that it's a really big moment for them, but I'm also like, just hold it together. Do you have to have I understand you're overwhelmed emotionally, but can you not self-regulate for like this speech?
Do you not think that's a
now?
little bit performative though? Like someone like Emma Stone has to, she might have been genuinely a bit shocked, but it has to ham it up because you understand the narrative of this race. You understand the racial dimension to it. You get it, that there's going to be a bit, so you've got to be, oh my God, like I can't, this is just like, even though it obviously we all know that you're putting it on, but like you still have to kind of do it.
But I actually was wondering if she was going to mention Lily specifically.
I thought she was going to.
She didn't.
Yeah.
Maybe it's weirder to do that. Maybe it's also
bringing attention to what everyone sort of knows.
Or disrespectful to the other nominees, maybe. I don't know. But I was like, I wonder if she'll like kind of, talk about...
Well, Adele did that with Beyonce, didn't she, when she won the Grammy? She was just like, Beyonce, what am I doing here? Like, you deserve this award. And maybe that, like, I respected when Adele did that, but I can also get that Emma's like, well, I did a good performance. Like, I know that Lily did one too, but I'm really proud of what I did. Yeah. I don't want to sort of suggest that I don't deserve the award.
We needed Leo to get up and be like, I'm gonna let you finish.
Can you imagine? That would have made this the best Oscars in history. But yeah, it was a bit sad, and I feel like, it's always hard when they do cut to like the other nominees for their reactions because they're all actors and they're really good at hiding their emotions. But Lily looked quite sad, I thought.
Well, speaking of Killers of the Flower Moon, like 0 out of 10. For our guy Marty, which I think when we do look back on the Oscars, we will say that that was a mistake. I think people will think about Killers of the Flower Moon for a long, long time. People who didn't necessarily vibe it this year will come around to it, I think. They'll be like, oh, wow, Marty was cooking in like his later years. This movie was important and he did something special with it. I think in all the categories, I can see why others have won, like except for maybe the Best Actress we're talking about. But I felt really sad to see it get shut out.
I know. I was wondering how you were feeling because you're such a Nolan guy, but then you're also a Marty stan. So do you feel like conflicted? Or
yeah, I would have loved to see the Oppenheimer love spread out a little bit more. Marty's got enough Oscars, I guess, but
he only got one.
Yeah, that's true. He's only got The Departed. Is that what he got it for? That's actually okay. I take back what I said. That's outrageous.
Thank you.
Yeah, Nolan pipe down. Yeah.
I actually think he has struggled because when we were talking about Shogun the other week, I was thinking of Silence, the film that he did set in Japan in the turn of the 17th century. And I remember thinking that film was one of the best of that year. And I think it got nominated for no Oscars other than a sound
maybe it's like everyone
one.
like me thinks Marty's just got 1,000 Oscars because every movie he's done has featured so many great Oscar winners. And they're like, Marty's had his time.
Yeah. I think he's got heaps of nominations, but yeah, only one win for The Departed. So
wow. Well, hopefully they'll be rectifying that in the future.
The other film, I think we touched on this briefly, and I guess we sort of knew that it wasn't going to pick up many Barbie. Like, it got the Billie Eilish song, and that was it. That feels probably all it really deserves, and we probably don't even think it deserves that one.
No, they gave it to the wrong Barbie song. Definitely.
Out of the 3 Barbie songs they could have given it to, they picked the worst one.
I don't know why everyone is so obsessed with that song in the Academy or the voters.
Everyone's just obsessed with Billie Eilish and her brother boyfriend. So that's got some weird vibes between those two.
Let's not delve into this one. I think we might stray into strange legal territory.
Yeah, but you know what I think about it.
You've said it to me directly.
Okay, good.
I think each of us have got our own winners and losers of the night we want to get into. But before that, I thought we could score ourselves on our predictions from last week. And this is an interesting one because we were pretty similar, except on a couple where we pivoted. And I mean, Thomas, you've done very well in this, but let's just go through them bit by bit. So Best Picture, we all said that Oppenheimer would win, and it did. Best Director, we all said that Christopher Nolan would win, and he did. Best Actor, we said Cillian would win, and he did. Best Actress, we said it was going to be Lily. We were all wrong. Things get a bit interesting here. Original Screenplay, I said The Holdovers. Mel, you said Past Lives. Thomas, you said Anatomy of a Fall, and you were correct.
Thank you.
How do you feel?
Smug.
Good. See, the thing is, with the Oscars, guys, basically, when you've seen every single one, you just get to know the pattern of voting and, what the Academy likes. And I'm happy to kind of talk about it off air, but yeah, continue.
But on that category, I'm very happy with Anatomy of a Fall. I thought it was like a fine film, and I'm happy for Justine Triet and her husband who wrote it, which is a bit weird that they wrote a movie about a creative partnership where people steal each other's ideas and maybe kill each other.
That is weird, actually.
And also for Messi, obviously.
Yeah, and also for Messi the dog, yeah. And the last category all predicted the same, American Fiction for Adapted Screenplay, and it was the winner.
Yes.
We feel pretty good about that too?
I'm really glad that American Fiction got a look in, and that was the one I think it kind of was a clear winner. So yeah, I was happy with that, and well done, Thomas.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Weird the holdovers shut out completely then, basically.
Divine Joy Randolph for Best Supporting Actress, which I think she was the favourite for, and I think totally deserves. And I guess that's the other one, Giamatti was good, but he was never going to be Killian. I get it. And there was this last-minute plagiarism speculation story that hit, too late to impact voting, but would have been a bigger story, I reckon, if it had won in the screenplay category.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, on to our winners and losers of the night. This could be a film, a person, a moment, anything. Mel, why don't you take it away? Who was your winner of this year's Oscars?
The winner, the best performance, an Oscar-worthy performance, Al Pacino, delivering the final film of the night. I have watched it 20 times since, and I cannot stop. I just love everything about it. I love how he wanders onto the stage. He says this weird thing about there being some Shakespeare in order. Then he kind of very dramatically goes the last word of the evening. His tone is all weird and off the chart. And then he gets out his envelope and he says here it comes.
And I have to go to the envelope for that. And I will. Here it comes. And my eyes see Oppenheimer. Yes, Emma Thomas.
And I see Oppenheimer. And everyone is so confused.
So confused. It's is he mistaken it? Is this a mistake again? Yeah.
It's just the most scattered delivery and so wonderful. And yeah, no one wants to clap because everyone, obviously, the trauma from Moonlight La La Land looms large in Hollywood's imagination.
Pacino's done a Warren Beatty. This is going
He
dark,
always has to say it twice. He has to start saying the cast for everyone to accept it. It's just so
It's so funny you
insane.
have him as your winner because I've got him as my loser for the way that he presented the awards.
From that though?
It just felt odd. It's this is the end of it. I love Pacino, and there was a bit of drama there, which was cool, but the ceremony sort of all the energy fizzling. This is supposed to be a big, exciting moment, and you're just not sure. That's not a great way to end a ceremony.
No, you don't want to have people asking the question did we just find out the winner or not?
I feel because he's in his 80s now. People are probably you sure he's good to do this? And they're he's fine. He usually has good days.
Also, to be fair, he's a new dad, so he's probably very tired.
Yeah.
Who was your winner, Thomas?
My winner, I had two. I had John Cena. I actually thought, in a ceremony that didn't feature much memorable stuff for me.
Imagine going back 15 years and saying John Cena is going to be a guy at the Academy Awards.
I know. My friend who loves both the Oscars and wrestling, I know he's going to... Well, actually, he's already texted me to be this is a big night. I thought he that was pretty funny. You're going to see it all over your Instagram feeds and stuff, so I guess that was a kind of highlight. And I think, I've been banging the Gosling drum hard, but again, I think tonight, hearing they came out with even, it only did wonders for his reputation and his stock. He was really funny, and the performance was great, so yeah, he was a big winner for me.
Who was your winner?
I had two. I had one was Godzilla -1, the team behind that. So they won for best visual effects. That was a really, really well-made film. A Japanese sort of newish take on Godzilla that is disconnected from the whole monsterverse stuff that is going on in cinemas at the moment. And I think the director of that movie was also the guy in charge of visual effects. So he won it, and I think they famously did it with a very small budget. And the movie looks amazing. It's very well made, and it's a very good film as well. But my other one, we haven't really talked about it much on the show, but The Zone of Interest, a movie that I think is very odd, very good, but very odd the way that it's shot. I've heard someone describe it as it's more of a video art piece, and it's a very intense and harrowing story, and it won 2 out of its 5 Oscars, which is really, really interesting. And when Jonathan Glazer, the director, won for Best International Feature, he gave some very, very strong words discussing the war in Gaza, and he's already copying backlash from sort of pro-Israel figures. He's a Jewish man, and the producer of the movie is also Jewish. Glazer said that he refuted his Jewishness and the Holocaust being hijacked by an occupation, a clear reference to Israel. And he said that this movie wasn't just made about something that happened in the past. When we were making it, we were thinking about what is happening in the world right now and said very explicitly, we didn't want to say, look what they did then. We were saying rather, look what they do now. Our film shows where dehumanization leads at its worst. And people sometimes think that the Oscars are annoying when people talk about politics. Ricky Gervais has that famous Golden Globes thing. I think that's dumb. Like, these are artists making art about politics in the world. Let them use the moment of them accepting an award to describe what motivates them and how they feel about things. I thought it was one of those examples where the Academy Awards can be powerful and transcend just this sort of celebrity fashion festival that I think a lot of us get sucked into it for.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I am interested that there wasn't as much politics as I might have expected, given what's going on in the world. So, yeah.
We should say that the director of 20 Days in Mariupol, who won Best Documentary Feature, also talked. He said that, I wish I could trade my Oscar to stop Russia invading Ukraine. So, if we're talking about the heaviness of these awards, having like two ongoing, like horrific conflicts referenced, it is dark.
Yeah, it is.
I've already mentioned my loser of the evening, Al Pacino. Mel, who are your losers?
My loser is Emma Stone's dress. So she was wearing this lovely Louis Vuitton dress, which was kind of an ode to what Bella Baxter wears in Poor Things, like very costumey dress. And when she got up to accept her award for Best Actress, she said so many times, like, my dress is broken, the back of my dress is broken. And I really feel for the people whose whole night was her wearing that dress and the kind of repercussions that are going to come from that dress being publicly named as broken. Like, I think the poor person who put her in it, who was responsible for setting up, the person who did the fitting, Louis Vuitton, who ordered like the material. Like, I hope
Louis Vuitton are going to be okay.
I just there's going to be an ICAC into it, and I know she was just saying it off the cuff, but I feel for her dress and the dress.
Well, when our colleague Michael Adado, who was in LA for the ceremony, interviewed her backstage, he said that the dress was sort of fixed, so there was someone on hand to restitch her back into it somehow.
Oh, great. Maybe John Cena.
Thomas, how about you for a loser?
Yes, this will shock neither of you, but Bradley Cooper. He was probably the night's biggest loser. He really film lost, was it None from 8?
Yeah.
And also just a loser.
And he's not a loser. He's just super keen on the Oscars, like we all are. No, I feel for Bradley. It was almost like he may as well not have been involved in this year's Oscars. Maestro was totally shut out. And I also had, again, this won't surprise you, I also had Kimmel. I think, he didn't do a good job as host. I'll be shocked if he's back next year. I'm kind of surprised that he keeps doing it. If there are such, intense restrictions on what he can do and say, I don't know, if I was him, I wonder if later on tonight he's like, this is maybe doing me more harm than good now. I might not say yes next year.
That's interesting. On the other hand, it's seems pretty easy. He can phone it in and get paid millions of dollars.
Yeah, but at what point do you start being like, he's probably not that poor. What point do you start being like, what about if people going to think I'm lame now?
Wow.
From what I can gather, no one seemed to be like, he did a pretty good job. Like, everyone was universally like, that sucked.
Yeah.
And that's important to those guys.
Yeah, and maybe he realizes it. Maybe the Oscars, when they do their sort of post-mortem, are like, here's what worked, and maybe we do need some more excitement.
Or maybe what his measure of success is different to, maybe it is just doing a safe performance.
Yeah, I'm getting through it. I didn't get slapped.
Maybe
win-win.
that is a win for him.
I just reckon this time next year, Sam Pang.
I'm so here for that.
That'd be great.
Well, considering Pacino basically was Daryl Summers at this year's.
And Mel, you want to talk about a funny little bit of trivia. We wouldn't have seen this if you're watching the broadcast on Channel 7 where it is airing in Australia. But if you're watching in America, you would have seen a very odd 30-second ad for a geopolitical policy.
Yeah, you wanted politics. You got it. You got it. The Aukus was brought to international attention.
And what is the Aukus?
What is the Aukus for those of us who...
What is the Aukus? Well, you love politics.
But of all the acronyms, of all the acronyms that are on my radar...
I think AUKUS just stands for Australia, UK, US, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It's just...
Well, that makes sense now.
Good. Obviously this has been a huge deal here because it's had a lot of political fallout in terms of we had a deal with France that fell over and now we've renegotiated this other deal with our allies.
Our editor, Bevan Shields, famously, was the one questioning Emmanuel Macron and said, do you believe Scott Morrison lied to you? He said, do you think Scott Morrison lied to you? He said, I don't think I knew.
Oh,
that
it's
was
such a-
that was us breaking our deal with the French and doing this one with America and the UK.
Yeah, to build us a fleet of nuclear submarines. So, if you were overseas, you saw this ad and it kind of had soaring music. It was very dramatic. It was like submarines being built in the US. It was all very patriotic. But, just interesting seeing that through the eyes of a different country, given how much news it's had here. And also a fun little moment of Australia in the Oscars, because we didn't have that much.
It feels odd. It feels odd in a ceremony where like Oppenheimer, a very like anti-war, anti-military industrial complex film is sweeping. These guys are like, do you guys want to like build submarines that are nuclear powered? Let's line up now.
Let's show them what we did with nuclear.
All right, well, let's just touch on a couple of other little small bits and pieces that we think are worth chatting about. Wes Anderson won his first ever Oscar and was not there to collect it.
The most Wes Anderson movie of all
I
time.
love that he did not go.
Talk us through this category, Thomas.
Yes, so this was the category where best live action short, and it was kind of our best shot at winning an Oscar. We had two different nominees, Sarah McFarlane and Nikki Benson.
We being Australia, not like us three.
Yeah.
No, we should have.
We should have had something in there. Australia had two separate nominees, and I'm pretty sure Red, White and Blue by Nikki Bentham was the favourite, and yet it ended up going to Wes Anderson. I haven't seen this short film he's done. It's on Netflix, so surprising that I haven't seen it. But yeah, and he didn't even show up. So it was just like...
It is kind of funny. And maybe he thought, like, I don't think I'll win because you never give me anything. Also, he's like, you've never given me anything before. Fuck you guys. I'm not going to...
And do you reckon he's kind of like a bit annoyed? Because like he's done so many feature-length films, and then to win for this, like I wonder if he's just like, ugh.
Where was he? Do we have any confirmation on where he was?
Probably photographing some kind of symmetrical building.
I hope it was like a political... I hope it was a political stance. Like, I hope he was like, I'm not going because I don't respect your system.
I'm sure it was. And the other winner who didn't collect their award was Hayao Miyazaki for The Boy and the Heron, which I respect. He's a Japanese guy making his sick films and is just like,
he doesn't need
cool,
the Oscar.
Thanks guys, I don't need this.
Yeah.
I did hear, interestingly, the Japanese kind of Oscars were on over the weekend, and their best international film went to Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 1. They just like,
get it.
Shout out Japan. They're just like, when the Oscars are like, zone of interest, this very heavy meditative movie about the banality of evil or whatever, and they're just like, Tom Cruise is sick. Like, let's go.
That is amazing.
Is such a good call.
So we should live blog that.
So at the end of the day, having watched the ceremony, seen who won, seen who lost, thought about it, how do we feel about the state of the Academy Awards and the state of cinema and culture in general?
Look, I think I feel pretty good about the state of cinema looking at the lineup. They're amazing films, and I feel less good about the Academy Awards. I do think they kind of pick the safer film. I do think the predictability of it is not a good thing for the ceremony itself or for, film culture to kind of just have such clear winners as we did in this time. And I don't necessarily, we were just going through our lists and we were saying, we did pick all the winners, but the ones we all thought should win were actually quite different to the ones that did win. So I guess, I don't know, I think the Academy Awards probably will need to think about how it's going to mix it up to keep the audience engaged with the ceremony itself and the meaningfulness of those awards. But yeah, I feel pretty good about the state of cinema after watching that. Thomas?
I think it's interesting. We spoke about how last year the Academy maybe did let's do the silly one and let's recognise Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was a great film, but it does feel like certain films we just know are going to be Oscar bait. I mean, the last thing anyone wants is for there to be more awards or for the ceremony to go longer. But it does feel like increasingly in this world where there are so many great movies coming out, having drama and comedy is a conversation that perhaps is worth revisiting. I know you're big on Oscars history. I mean, we've both seen all the Oscars ever. But there are so many good films out there, and sometimes it is a bit crazy to have a Poor Things and an Oppenheimer in the same category.
Totally. I guess one of the things I've been thinking about is projecting forward 12 months from now. I mean, we're just at the start of the year, really, but is June Part 2 going to do an Oppenheimer? Is this locked in? Is
God, I hope not.
Is June going to win 6 to 8
Surely
Oscars? You don't
not.
think so? I think it could. I think June will pick up 6 Oscars this year.
I think it will win a lot, but I reckon it will be too blockbuster for the Academy Awards. I think it'll win a lot of cinematography and
also,
those kind of ones.
Do they love sequels?
No, interestingly, they tend to more reward the sort of final one in a trilogy. Famously, Lord of the Rings: Return of the King is the one that got 11 wins, I think, by the end of it. But I just think that there's something Denis Villeneuve is not just a blockbuster director. He's considered to be a very arty director, I guess, and for lack of a better term. And there's just a lot of hype around the performances of these people. And I think as the Oscars are trying to blend together their recognition of great performances and great production with how do we be relevant to audiences, that could converge on June Part 2. That's just like my early
I love that.
prediction.
Your early predictions, 12 months out.
Yeah.
Oscars are barely like cold in their grave. You're like, now June.
I think
June is going to win it all.
What they actually need to do, and this may shock you, is perhaps take a leaf from the Logies book and do most popular and most outstanding. And so in which case we can have,
This idea makes me so angry. I think we just got to wrap up the pod at this point, basically.
But then Tom Cruise can win some Oscars.
Yeah, I do think it's outrageous that someone like Tom Cruise still is hanging in the wind.
Yeah, but then maybe they should make an award for kind of his genre of film, you know what I mean?
Well, they've talked about this. There was that
Yeah.
brief period where they announced like best popular movie, which was
Yeah.
exactly that. And I think this question is, you get money, great, you're happy. The Oscars are not about that. This is recognizing something different to that. And I think there's a concern that if it does lean in that direction, it dilutes actually what it is. It loses its purpose and no one
Yeah.
cares about it anymore. All right, well, let's leave it there. That was a pleasure. I don't think it's fully hit me yet. Like the adrenaline is still coursing through my veins. I'm going to have a bit of a come down now that this is done and dusted. But the good news is...
Why don't you go watch June again?
I probably will. Maybe Oppenheimer to celebrate the victory. We'll be back on Thursday with a usual episode of the week. But until then, guys, thanks. See you then.
See you then.
He's looking at you, kid.
That is in Casablanca.
Well done.
This episode of The Drop was produced by Margaret Gordon. If you enjoyed listening to today's episode of The Drop, make sure to follow us in your favourite podcast app, leave us a review, or better yet, share it with a friend. I'm Osman Faruqi. See you on Thursday.